Blade is not only an entertaining action film, but it puts a twist on the vampire mythos by replacing its Christian foundation with Kabbalah and Afrocentrism. Classical vampire stories are based on Christianity, and more specifically, the story of the fall of man. Vampirism is a metaphor for the fallen state. The thirst for blood is a metaphor for the sexual urge. The serpent convinced Eve to question God and to separate Adam from his creator. Eve used her sexuality to awake Adam's pride. She coaxed him into believing that he doesn't need God because he can be God himself. Eating the forbidden fruit, which is a symbol for the rebellion against God's law, led to the separation from the divine and the descent into matter. Eating the forbidden fruit is also a symbol for indulging in lust and fornication. The fall turned Adam and Eve into animalistic beings, detached from the Heavenly Father, put under the rulership of the serpent. Like I said before, Blade uses the vampire mythos in a different way than classical vampire stories. Vampirism, in the narrative framework of Blade, doesn't represent the fallen state. It functions as a metaphor for the enslavement and drainage of people. Corporate America is the vampire that steals the identity and life force of its citizens, especially from those of African descent. The film begins with exterior shots of a city that might be New York, Detroit or Chicago. The flashy shots are not just there for cosmetic purposes. The director establishes right away that the film's setting is an essential part of the narrative. The transition from daytime to nighttime implies to the audience that he leads us on a journey to see the dark truth behind the shiny facade. We find ourselves in a car with an attractive woman and a horny young man. His costume design is a hint at the Red Riding Hood fairy tale, which is a parable about the soul's descent into matter. The red-headed woman, who literally has our friend by the balls, represents Lilith. The scene is designed like a Kabbalistic ritual. Through the eyes of the thrill-seeking stranger, we experience the descent into the underworld. Lilith leads us into the Klipoth to show us what's hidden behind the curtain. The young man and his female companion walk through a slaughterhouse, a foreshadowing of the fate that awaits him, and also a visual metaphor for the film's hidden theme. The director implies that America is a slaughterhouse that uses its citizens as a food source. The trip into the urban forest turns into a nightmare. Before the modern version of Red Riding Hood becomes a snack, Blade crashes the party and saves his adventurous ass from the wolves. By putting us in the shoes of a helpless nobody, the filmmakers imply that we are the prey of the system and that we are in desperate need of a savior. The savior figure is not Jesus, but a black man who's waging war against an evil, exploitative society. The heavily armed, sword-wielding, karate black belt version of Malcolm X.
Dolomite is my name and fucking up motherfuckers is my game.
Blade is a throwback to the protagonists of blaxploitation films. Actors like Sidney Poitier represent the house Negro, the whitewashed version of a black man who was granted the keys to the house because he mastered the art of being a white man in a black man's body. The typical blaxploitation hero represents the rebellious field Negro who goes against the rules of the plantation. Characters like Shaft are a power fantasy for Afro-American males. A strong alpha male who does what he wants, lives by his own rules and doesn't bend over for white people. He kicks ass, bangs white bitches and resolves his problems with violence. All of this sounds somewhat absurd, but American media still perpetuates this type of dialectics about black men. The Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X narrative is a political expression of the house versus field Negro dialectic. Black Panther is the modern superhero version of the MLK versus Malcolm X dichotomy. Hollywood tries to teach a new generation of black Americans that being rebellious and combative is a bad decision, and that trying to fit into the plantation is the morally superior choice. Blade is Hollywood's evolution of the classical blaxploitation hero, the deified version of the escaped slave. His character design is similar to Batman, Geralt and Dee, an outcast who lives between two worlds, the mundane world and the realm of darkness, a dangerous place where the creatures of the night reside and the evil aspects of the human soul are hidden. Our heroic outcast has the ability to move through both worlds, because he's half man and half monster. He doesn't belong to one world or the other, destined to wander alone and to create a balance between light and dark. Although he is not accepted by normal people, he serves as a protector and a mediator between their world and the realm of darkness. If you look closely, you realize that most superheroes have a similar design pattern. This is no coincidence, because the superhero is a Jewish invention. Superheroes are based on Solomon, the master magician. Solomon had supernatural abilities and used different demons to influence the physical realm. He was the smartest man alive and mastered both the light and the dark arts. Jewish mystics celebrate Solomon as a godlike figure and dedicate their whole life to follow in his footsteps. Modern Judaism is a post-biblical religion, partly Abrahamic, partly Babylonian. It was formed by the tribe of Judea during their captivity in Babylon. Mesmerized by the worldly possessions of the Chaldeans, the captive tribesmen started to integrate Babylonian value and magic systems into their faith. The Talmud and Kabbalah are the product of this integration process. Modern Jews deny the salvation through Christ. This is a core element of the Jewish identity. Practitioners of Kabbalah use magic to master the material realm and to become superior godlike beings. In its core, Kabbalah is a Lucierfian system that opposes Christianity in almost every aspect. Christ preached about ego death and the overcoming of the physical realm. Kabbalists strive to deify their ego and become the masters of matter. The saying, "better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," perfectly captures the Lucierfian attitude, an attitude that is also prevalent in Kabbalah. The superhero is the brainchild of Kabbalah and a representation of the Lucierfian doctrine. A mortal who receives supernatural abilities, overcomes his mundane existence, and becomes a god among humans. A Christ-like figure who's not only able to save himself, but all people around him. The superhero represents the initiate. Through the mastery of the Qliphoth, the underworld, or in secular terms, the subconscious, he redeems the fallen aspects of his nature and reclaims his lost godhood. Batman, who was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, both of Jewish descent, might be the best expression of the Kabbalistic ascension process.
It should be good practice if something ever takes us to Mount Everest, Batman.
I think we'll be confining our campaign against evil to Gotham City for some time to come, old chum.
The oversaturation of superhero films is only partially based on their commercial success. Hollywood also uses them as a vehicle to make the Lucierfian doctrine mainstream and to further eliminate Christianity from culture and entertainment. Blade screenwriter David S. Goyer is of Jewish descent. Judging by the way he sets up the narrative, he's clearly an initiate of Kabbalah. Like I said before, Goyer detached the vampire myth from its Christian foundation. In Blade, vampirism is not an expression of the fallen state, but a metaphor for an abusive and exploitative society. Corporate America is the vampire, and the people his food source. From a symbolic standpoint, Sinners is the same film as Blade. The execution of its Kabbalistic and Afrocentric motifs is just way more clumsy and radical. Blade criticizes America as an economic and political entity. The film doesn't make extreme statements about race and religion. Sinners promotes racial division and portrays Christianity as a religion of the European oppressor, a tool to control black people and detach them from their African roots. If you know anything about the spread of Christianity in Africa, then you know that Kugler's claim is wrong. His perspective is either based on ignorance or on a calculated attempt to attack the Christian faith. Knowing the inner workings of Hollywood, I'm certain it's the latter. The fact that the studio released an openly anti-Christian film on Good Friday should also give you a clue about Sinners' mocking attitude towards Christ. Hollywood doesn't promote radical pro-black sentiments because of their love for black people. They use black movements as an instrument for racial division and the destruction of Christian values. The Jewish-owned music labels use rap music for the same purpose.
I got that, yeah, I'm on train, yeah, I got a bank, don't even think, yeah, I'm on train, yeah, I'm on train, yeah, I got a bank, don't even think,
Blade represents the black male growing up in America, born into poverty, a dysfunctional community, and a fatherless home. Behind Blade's powerful appearance hides a trauma-ridden psyche, ruled by shame and self-hatred. Blade's psychological makeup represents the collective unconscious of Afro-Americans. The dynamic of Blade, his mother, and Deacon Frost also expresses the film's Kabbalistic and Afrocentric motifs. Blade's mother represents his fallen soul, or in secular terms, his trauma-ridden psyche. Her becoming a vampire and the lover of Frost is a metaphor for the corruption of the black psyche through slavery and multi-generational abuse. Frost represents the white slave master who corrupted black people. He's the false father, the originator of black people's suffering and creator of their self-loathing identity. In Judaism, Satan is known as the opposer. Jews see him as a necessary evil because without him, spiritual evolution wouldn't be possible. The ego is a secular rebranding of Satan, the enemy within, who stands in the way of our growth and emotional well-being. Good storytelling is a reflection of the human soul and the inner struggle to overcome the ego. Good antagonists are not some random evil dudes. Their character design is a reflection of the hero's dark side. the elements in his soul or psyche that torment him and keep him from reaching his potential.
Look at me. Look at me.
Frost is Blade's ego, the imprint of the slave master and the psyche of black people. Goya didn't characterize Frost as a powerful king who rules over the oppressive system. He's not a pureblood, a bastard second-class vampire with ambitions to rule over the whole world. Frost represents the European colonialist who built his world dominance through the exploitation of minorities. The scene in Chinatown, where Blade saves the Chinese girl from Frost, is a subtle hint at the exploitation of Chinese people in America. Extracting the blood from Blade to become a god is a reference to the exploitation of Africans. The blood not only represents the labor, creativity and culture of African people, but also melanin. According to different black scholars, occult teachers and black supremacist groups, melanin is like a magical substance, a blessing from God which gives black people their special artistic and spiritual abilities. White people, who lack melanin and therefore have no soul, have to exploit and manipulate black people to get access to their divine gifts. Sinners in Black Panther also hint at the extraction of melanin by the genetically defective white Europeans. Trying to steal Wakanda's secret technology and get access to vibranium is a metaphor for the exploit of black people's talents and the extraction of melanin.
The reason why they don't have melanin is because we were created out of melanin and they were created out of gene splicing in the physical world. And part of that, they gene splice, they grafted not only genes from us, but they grafted genes from an ape. But even the ape is more spiritual because the ape is in its rightful habitat. And it does things nature-wise. But the European is grafted, and this is why it looks like an ape with the same hair and all this type of stuff, but it's something of only lower material matter. So therefore, the supreme part that makes us God, which was created in heaven, is the black dot.
For the sake of telling the audience that not all white people are racist slave owners, Goya introduces Whistler as Blade's positive father figure, the reformed white dude who overcame his slave master tendencies and taught Blade the skills to fight the evil system. Goya uses Whistler to soften the racial themes and to express that the exploitative design of America isn't purely based on race, but also on corporate structures. There are white dudes with Nazi accents, Chinese fat asses, and Rastafari-looking vampires who use the sheep as their food source. Casting Udo Kier as the leader of the Vampire Council has multiple reasons. On one hand, it's a pop cultural reference to his role as Dracula. They also chose him because he's German and always comes across like an evil Nazi general. With this casting decision, the filmmakers imply that the white European fascist type is the creator and ruler of the vampiristic system, a system that Frost wants to take over. The fact that Kier's character is called Dragonetti and is probably Italian doesn't take away from the subtle Nazi implication.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Sieg Heil! Mutterfickers!
Dragonetti is an Italian surname. It's derived from the word drago, which translated means dragon. In mythology, the dragon usually represents the ego, lower self, or in religious terms, Satan. Night stories about a warrior in shining armor who descends into the abyss, slays the dragon, and saves the princess symbolize the purification process of the soul. The knight represents spirit, the princess the soul, the dragon ego, and the abyss the subconscious. Slaying the dragon and saving the princess from the abyss is a metaphor for dissolving the ego and making the unconscious conscious. By calling the leader of the Vampire Council Dragonetti, Goya hints that the vampiristic system of America is ruled by ego, an inverted pyramid where the lower self sits on top. Goya's reference to the dragon at the top also hints at the noble bloodlines that own the planet. In Egypt, China, Europe, Japan, and many other places, the ruling elite claims that they are descendants of dragons. There are many mythological and religious records of fallen angels who secretly rule the world. Some records describe them as giants or interdimensional entities that look similar to clowns. Other records claim that they are shape-shifting reptiles who live among humans. There are theories that the serpent in the garden is a representation of the reptilian entities who separated us from God by changing our DNA. The vampire represents the fallen man who's ruled by his lower nature, or in biblical terms, the serpent. Just like dragons, reptiles and snakes are also used as symbols for the lower self. Voldemort, who's a representation of Harry's ego, looks like a reptile who can command and speak to snakes. The fact that Stoker chose a noble from the draconic bloodline as the inspiration for Dracula might be a subtle hint at the reptilian influence on the human race. Karen's character arc is connected to the film's Kabbalistic and Afrocentric motifs. In the beginning of the film, she's fully immersed in corporate America. She has a respectable job as a hematologist and an on-off relationship with the whitest white dude in the universe. Her encounter with the fried vampire makes her realize that the American dream is a fairy tale which hides a grim reality. Goya uses the reunion scene with Karen's ex to imply that she was living in a pretty illusion, which is secretly a demon pit, with a seemingly nice guy who's really a white devil. Escaping the pit from a monstrous lover is a symbol for overcoming her old whitewashed identity and her illusions about the system. The scene where Karen offers Blade her blood has a sexual connotation. Leaving her white boy ex-lover and giving herself to a black male underlines Karen's transformation from an obedient servant who follows the rules of the plantation to a free and rebellious black woman who embraces her African heritage. Analyzing the film made me realize that Goya only appears like the typical privileged white boy who has no clue about the struggles of black people. I've come to the realization that his soul is blacker than Dr. Omar's and that he's on a mission to represent the brothers.
You don't mix white milk with chocolate milk and get half chocolate milk? When you ever see half chocolate milk? What kind of milk is this? It's half chocolate. Ain't no such thing as half chocolate. It's either chocolate or it ain't. It's either chocolate or it ain't.
The underground temple is a reference to the clip-off. On a symbolic level, Blade and Karen enter the underworld, where they face the historic trauma buried in the subconscious of black Americans. The ritual scene reveals the true face of America. Underneath the shiny facade, America is a big sacrificial site where the life force of people is harvested. Blade is put into a stone coffin by his mother, who's a representation of his trauma-ridden psyche. Being buried alive by his mom is a visual metaphor for being buried under multi-generational trauma. The scene also implies that the life of a black man in America equals an existential coffin. After seeing the true face of America and her ex, Karen releases Blade from his coffin, a symbolic resurrection through the union of male and female. On a mundane level, Karen's blood offering represents the reunion of the black man and the black woman, who were separated by the system. On a metaphysical level, the scene represents the purification of Blade's soul. After receiving Karen's blood, Blade kills his mother, a symbol for the renewal of his soul through the dissolvement of multi-generational trauma. The union of male and female is also a symbol for the alignment of spirit and matter, a process that leads to the realization of the higher self. Blade's human self dies. He's resurrected as a godlike being, free of shame and self-hatred, ready to punish the slave master, or on a metaphysical level, the dragon. The sacrifice of the 12 pure-blood vampires and Frost's attempt to become a god is another reference to Kabbalah. Many Hollywood films refer to the numbers 12 and 13 because of their esoteric significance. Frost stands in the middle of an altar, surrounded by the 12 pure-blood vampires. He represents the number 13 and its metaphysical attributes. In Kabbalah, the number 13 relates to the transcendent dimension of godliness. 12 represents the 12 lines that border a cube. The fact that the 12 are all connected in the center represents 13. 13 is the number that binds separateness into oneness. The 12 tribes of Israel are separate entities, all united under Jacob, the father of the 12 tribes. 13 represents the overcoming of separation and the realignment with God. In the zodiac system, there are 12 zodiac signs. The 13th zodiac, which is the hidden sign, represents the integration of the 12 signs into one, a transcendental event where the initiate goes beyond human consciousness. The 12 labors of Hercules is a parable about the sun's passage through the 12 zodiac signs and also the 12 stages of soul initiation. Each zodiac sign represents a specific spiritual attribute, which the initiate has to integrate into his being to reach the God state. In Christianity, the 13 is associated with Christ, who is the ultimate expression of God in a physical form. The 12 disciples represent the 12 zodiac signs, the 12 cranial nerves in the brain, and the 12 qualities of the mind, which have to be disciplined and put under the rulership of Christ. The crucifixion on the mountain of Golgotha, which translated means place of the skull, is a subtle hint that the crucifixion is not only a historic, but also a metaphysical event that takes place in the head of the enlightened person. The two thieves are the eyes. Jesus, who is crucified between them, represents the third eye, also known as the pineal gland. The cross represents the cube. Christ on a cross is a symbol for consciousness being trapped in matter. Christ's resurrection is a symbol for ego death and spiritual enlightenment. Jacob called the place where he encountered God Peniel. This is also reference to the pineal gland and its significance for the enlightenment process. In tarot, the 13th card represents death and renewal. Getting this card in a tarot reading is a signifier for major life changes, spiritual transformation, and the death of old identities. Blade is able to defeat Frost, his white boy shadow self, the dragon, and to leave the underworld with Karen, his purified soul, the princess. Karen and Blade escape the soul harvesting plantation and return to the light. The gold shimmering sun is a reference to alchemy, the creation of gold, or in mystical terms, the realization of the higher self. The visual design of the scene implies that Blade and Karen reached a higher level of consciousness after overcoming the historic trauma buried in their subconscious.